Tucked away in the rural stretches of Bihar is an isolated village called Sonbarsa. It is a place of mud paths and thatched roofs, miles away from the conveniences of modern infrastructure. Right at the edge of the settlement, standing as a physical border between the homes and a thick surrounding jungle, is an ancient peepal tree. The locals here live by a very specific, unbreakable rule. If you are walking near the village limits at night and you hear someone call your name from behind, you do not look back. They attribute this to an unseen entity they call Dak Baba. According to the folklore, if you answer the call or even turn your head to check, you belong to him. It is easy to dismiss this as local superstition. When a community lives hours away from emergency services, surrounded by dark woods, building strict supernatural rules is an effective way to create psychological armor against the unpredictable dangers of the night. In the summer of 2018, a local man named Rajdev found himself testing those boundaries. It was 1:30 in the morning, and he was walking back to Sonbarsa from a friend's wedding during a severe rainstorm. The heavy downpour had turned the dirt roads into thick, impassable mud. His phone battery had died hours earlier, leaving him without a flashlight or any way to call for assistance. Rajdev had never put much stock in the old ghost stories. He considered himself a rational man, even as his grandmother's warnings about the village boundaries began to echo in his memory. But logic offers very little comfort in absolute darkness. When you strip away modern technology and leave a person completely isolated in a harsh environment, rational thought quickly gives way to primal vulnerability. As Rajdev trudged closer to the village edge, passing by the old peepal tree, the ambient noises of the night seemed to vanish. The only sound left was the relentless, heavy drumming of the rain. Then, cutting through the downpour, a quiet voice spoke from directly behind him. It whispered his name, Raj, Dev. The cadence, the dialect, it was an exact match. It was his grandfather's voice, a man who had died 5 years earlier. Rajdev froze. He knew his grandfather was gone, but the biological urge to turn around and respond to a recognized authoritative family member is almost impossible to suppress. He forced his legs to move forward, staring straight ahead. A few seconds later, the voice came again, noticeably closer this time. Rajdev, stop. The pull of a familiar voice is a specific kind of weapon. By mimicking a loved one, the entity targets the one instinct stronger than fear, the desire to answer when called. Overwhelmed by the sensory overload of the storm and the terrifying familiarity of the voice, Rajdev made the mistake he had been warned about his entire life. He looked back. Standing under the peepal tree was an unnaturally tall figure, wrapped in drenched white cloth. Its face was obscured in the shadows, but it stared back with eyes that were a solid, glowing white. The figure slowly tilted its head at an impossible angle. Still using the grandfather's exact voice, it delivered a single command: "Don't go home." The paralysis broke. Rajdev turned and sprinted blindly toward the village, his feet slipping and fighting against the deep mud. Behind him, he could hear the distinct sound of bare feet slapping against the wet ground. Slap, slap, slap. The heavy, dragging footsteps were steadily closing the distance. Just as the outlines of the village huts came into view, an icy, heavy hand clamped down hard on his shoulder. Rajdev screamed, collapsed into the dirt, and lost consciousness. Physical flight fails once the boundary is crossed. By turning his head and acknowledging the call, Rajdev had already invited the entity into his reality. When his eyes finally opened, the rain was gone, morning sunlight was streaming in, and temple bells were ringing softly. The village pundit and several neighbors were standing over him. They told him where he was found. He wasn't near the entrance where he had collapsed. He was lying unconscious, perfectly still, directly beneath the roots of the peepal tree. But the pundit's face was grim. He explained that overnight, while Rajdev was trapped in the storm, his family home had burned to the ground. The fire started at the exact hour he encountered the figure. The timeline aligned perfectly. If Rajdev had simply walked home without stopping, He would have been asleep in his bed when the roof collapsed in flames. He ran from the temple down to his property. Where his house used to stand, there was nothing left but smoking debris and collapsed timber. But on the only remaining interior wall of his bedroom, written entirely in gray ash, there was a clear message in Hindi: "I had already forbidden you." The figure's earlier command, "Don't go home," suddenly carried the weight of a warning. The unseen entity had physically restrained Rajdev from entering a literal death trap, acting as a terrifying, uncompromising guardian. This experience still dictates the rhythm of life in Sonbarsa today. When the heavy rains start and the dirt roads turn to mud, the village completely shuts down. No one steps outside. Human survival in Sonbarsa depends on a grim bargain, obeying the monster in the dark to avoid the disasters of the daylight.